going on or glass to see what's going on in the workplace. So lack of promotion and sponsorship is really important to consider. Violence against women and girls continues to be a big issue across diverse women. And there's lack of attention that's been paid to missing women and girls of color, especially Indigenous women. And a few years ago, our committee really spent some time focusing on that. Also, lack of attention to individuals with disabilities. Last year, we did a webinar with the APA Committee on Disability Issues that really highlighted women living with disabilities and their needs related to the pandemic, and violence against women with disabilities was one thing that was highlighted. Maternal health is also a big issue. We live in a very developed and prosperous country, but women across so many backgrounds continue to have so much inequity in terms of giving birth successfully and safely, and even having access to assisted reproductive technologies. And that's something that's very close to my heart, where we partnered with other groups to have a webinar focused on women of color and infertility recently. Reproductive justice is a term that combines a focus on reproductive rights and justice, and we know that there's been a lot of challenges to women in that area. And there's, across all of these things that I've talked about, economic inequality just really runs deep. If we look at psychology, we are at a place where there's so many more women in the field of psychology. But what happened? It's also the time where we're making less as psychologists, right? So that it's one of those things that we have to see. How does that happen? Why is it the case that maybe in the 70s and 80s, psychologists had a higher ability to live at a more prosperous level? And why is it connected with, why are we seeing fewer women, more women in the field now, and also fewer opportunities for women in leadership, and women saying they still have difficulty in terms of leadership despite more women in the field. So there's just so many things to think about. And then many women are caregivers, and that role oftentimes is not accurately compensated and not valued as much as it should be in society. So these are a range of issues that our committee focuses on, and it's important to consider. And next, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Flores.
Thank you, Marie. So I'm going to give just a very brief overview of the history of our committee. We have a long, distinguished, and very proud history of the work that this group has done. In 1969, a group of women psychologists and their allies stormed APA Council of Representatives meeting at the APA convention in Miami, Florida. And part of what they were doing was demanding that the association develop structures to attend to women's issues in psychology. In response to this storming, Council created a task force on women's issues whose focus was to assess the status of women within the field and within the organization. And when the task force was disbanded, the board of directors established an ad hoc committee of women, which was formally established as a continuing committee on women in psychology beginning in 1973. So next year in 2023, this committee is going to be celebrating 50 years in existence within APA. During that time, CWP has been a leader in promoting diversity, equity, inclusion across an intersectional group of women. We have helped to promote women's issues via APA resolutions and policies by contributing to amicus briefs for state and federal legislation on issues related to women, in publications within psychology. We have also been a driving force in ensuring that there's feminist representation in APA governance and in the development and promotion of feminist leaders within psychology. Our committee consists of 6 members who are elected in staggered terms. So we have 2 members join the term each year as 2 members are rotating off. And we have very strong support through APA staff members. Tanya Burrell has been with APA, with this committee and with APA Women's Portfolio for many years. And so her institutional knowledge has been critical in getting us up to speed as we join the committee and in connecting and networking with other groups on campus within APA to support women's initiatives. And Isabel Orozco Vergara is another staff member within APA. We report to the board of directors and to APA Council of Representatives via the board for the Advancement of Psychology and the Public Interest, or BAPI for short. So BAPI is kind of our parent board, and they have a number of different committees that they oversee. Next slide. So I want to share, before I provide an overview of what the goals of the committee are, I want to share just a brief quote from Martha Mednick, who is the first chair of CWP when CWP became a continuing committee. She indicated, we should recall that the radical feminist proposals that led to the establishment that were regarded as outrageous or laughable. What has now become institutionalized and normative was established only as a consequence of aggressive, and I put this in quotes, unpleasant, yet strident demands by young, strong, very dissatisfied women. APA's response, though slow and measured, led eventually to the creation of CWP. Its accomplishments have been many and continue to grow and develop to this day. This chronology of CWP tells part of the history. The other piece is about the enthusiasm and dedication of all those who did the work. Without them, nothing would have happened. So first and foremost, we're a working committee, and every member of the committee will say, once you join the committee, we kind of hit the ground running and are continually working to try to promote and advance and raise awareness of issues that are pertinent to the well-being of women, and particularly focusing on women at the margins of society, right? So women of color, women with disabilities, women who identify as trans or as lesbian, and so on. So the key goals of our committee are to promote the health and well-being of all women intersectionally, both within the US and internationally, in reducing and eliminating discriminatory and exploitive practices that impact women, to highlight and celebrate the unique contributions that women have made to the field of psychology, and there are many. So we will be, as in recognition of the committee's 50th anniversary, we'll be celebrating the committee members and leaders and other women psychologists that have really contributed to shape the field of psychology as we know it today. We have also, as a committee, worked to enhance women's leadership and to make sure that all aspects and elements of APA are represented by women, especially women with feminist or womanist perspectives. So one way that we have done this as a committee is, many of you all might be, if you're not aware, I know there's some former participants here today, is the Leadership Institute for Women in Psychology was founded by CWP members almost almost about 20 years ago. I think the first class was in 2008. It was founded in 2007. The first class was in 2008. We've had 14 cohorts of women go through this leadership training program. Almost 400 participant leaders have completed the program. That today is now a year-long program of intense workshops that occur both during the spring of each year and in the fall of each year. And that Leadership Institute is targeting women who are in their mid-career stages. So if you are at that stage or approaching that stage and are interested in supplementing or getting some leadership training, strongly encourage you to look into LIWP. We are currently accepting applications for our 15th cohort, and I believe the application deadline might be approaching very soon. As a committee, we also monitor the activities of groups within APA to assess the impact of the work on women. We are consistently reviewing documents, and just, I'm not thinking of the word, policies, any statements that are coming from resolutions that are coming through APA to make sure that they are attending and including the needs of women in those documents and policies. We network and collaborate with others to team up to empower the needs of underrepresented groups within APA. So we have a very strong network of liaisons, both within APA and within our state institutions to address women's issues. And then finally, we work to promote the advocacy of women within public policy. And so liaise strongly with our APA advocacy office to know how we can support APA's advocacy and interventions for women's issues in DC and at state capitals and legislatures.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Now I'll turn over to Dr. Meghna Patel.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here today. I'm just going to highlight in the next couple of slides, I think one of my favorite things that this committee does, which is provide leadership awards and recognize the very hard work women psychologists are involved in every day. So certainly these awards demonstrate CWP's commitment to ensuring that women receive equity both within psychology and as consumers of psychological services, and that issues pertaining to women are kept at the forefront always of psychological research, education, training, and practice. One of the many wonderful things that this committee does is making sure that we promote equity. And the one way we do this, at least through our leadership awards, is making sure we are recognizing not only distinguished psychologists who've been in the field for many, many years, but also emerging leaders. And these awardees evidence CWP's commitment to diverse representation and social justice. And then lastly, you know, I think we all know individuals who are well deserving of various leadership awards, but for whatever reason are just not recognized or nominated. And so we certainly encourage self-nominations, which is an opportunity for folks to advocate for themselves too and be given opportunity to recognize their hard work. So I wanted to take just a minute or two to highlight a few of the awardees. Certainly I can go on and on about this. There's so many individuals to recognize here, but there's a few that we wanted to highlight. Many of these names will be very familiar to you, I'm sure. So on this slide, you'll see individuals who have received the Distinguished CWP Leadership Award. And so one of those is Dr. Martha E. Banks, a very famous neuropsychologist, of course, and a pioneer in the effective integration of feminist theory, who focused on issues experienced by women with disabilities and had certainly advanced psychology's understanding of the intersection of gender, race, and disability. Second, Dr. Melba Vasquez, another very famous psychologist, of course, the 2011 president of APA and the first Latina president of that organization, and a pioneer in the field of Hispanic research and Hispanic mental health, has been recognized as an influential role model and leader for women and really all people of color. And then the third being Dr. Carol Gilligan, who's a renowned ethicist and psychologist and has made extraordinary contributions as a developmental psychologist in advancing understanding of the influence of gender on moral reasoning and behavior. So those are a few of the distinguished leadership awardees. And then we also want to take a moment to highlight some of the individuals who have received the leadership awards for emerging. So Dr. Gerda Nicholas, for bringing mental health care to marginalized societies. Her research and intervention programs in the US and Haiti have really addressed issues such as contraception, pregnancy, depression, and so on, and have really had far-reaching implications for ethnic minority women and girls, not only here in the United States and Haiti, but in the global community at large. Dr. Susan Morrow, who is an APA fellow, a lifelong advocate for equality, social change, and cross-cultural understanding. She's been recognized for her work in the research, practice, education, and advocacy of women, people of color, and gay, lesbian, and bisexual individuals. And then Dr. Lillian Comas Diaz, who played a vital role in the founding of Division 45 of APA, which is the Society for Psychological Study of Culture, Ethnicity, and Race. And she received this award because her career exemplifies dedication to meeting client and community needs, the effective application of psychological services and sciences to the advancement of human justice and international human rights advocacy. So again, just a very small sampling, but just really shows you some amazing individuals and amazing work that they've done.
Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. We're going to switch to just a different part of our presentation now, and we'll have Dr. Erin Fettis and Dr. Josie Patel, who will be leading a discussion. So I'm going to invite them to unmute themselves.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
So thanks for kind of tuning in as we talk a little bit about what our committee focuses on. As Lisa mentioned, we are a working committee, and so we bring ourselves to our perspectives to resources and things that are sent our way for review. And one of the things that I think has been so powerful is how everyone in the committee kind of brings the different pieces of themselves to our discussion and what we offer, and as a collective are really able to notice and be aware of different pieces of social location and needs. And so as a committee, like, we have some really beautiful output. And so but we also bring awareness to the challenges we each individually face to the committee, which has led to lots of production of things that are important to us as individuals. And so we'd love to hear a little bit from y'all about what challenges you all have had to face. I might slightly deprioritize the word overcome, because it's okay if you have not overcome it, just things that you are maybe facing and dealing with related to your personal identity groups. And then thinking about actions that you've taken to ameliorate these impacts. And so if folks have thoughts kind of right away, I'm a big fan of just unmuting and sharing, no one needs to kind of raise your hand, just open discussion style. So if anyone wants to share kind of any immediate thoughts or reactions, we'd love to hear.
Hi, Erin. This is Josie, and thanks, y'all. I'm part of the committee, and for me, what this question brought up was in terms of being underrepresented in graduate school. I identify as a Latina. I'm from Texas, and I think our numbers at this point, maybe we're of all psychologists. Lisa, you can confirm that, 3 or 4% of all psychologists. So we're severely underrepresented in our field. We are one of the largest, if not the largest, minority group in the United States. We're underrepresented in psychology, but we're overrepresented in blue collar jobs, right? Our community is diverse and beautiful and all the things. However, what I found in entering psychology is that, there was a very pathologizing view of our community. And so those were some of the challenges in navigating the academic structure, and being one of the only Latina women in my different departments. And even being able to navigate the academic system coming from poverty as well. So when we think of intersecting identities, as Marie mentioned earlier, right, we might have these hidden identities that folks might not know, right, that we carry with us, our immigration status, our poverty level, classism, our chronic health, health intersections, all of those things. And so I think those pieces were definitely for me that I grappled with when I entered into the academy and into academia in the field of psychology. The action steps, I was very lucky and privileged that I did have a mentor in my master's program who really supported me to go into APA's conference and to find the sessions that other Latina psychologists were at that point. I just stumbled across a group of some sessions. I went to like a mentorship session that APA was facilitating for undergraduates, and I threw myself in there, and through there I was able to connect with quite a few names in the field of Latina psychologists who were doing the work that I wanted to do. So I'm a clinical and community psychologist, so I was able to find a community psychology program, and I found a mentor, Dr. Julia Pedia, who was amazing and beautiful and wonderful, and helped me navigate the academy. But I think that was really that action step of like, of us, when we look out for undergraduates and other folks in the different pipeline of saying, okay, go to that one spot, or having these platforms like this, these discussions where we can help folks navigate the system and all the hoops and the ropes that we've all been through, right, to get here. So finding support, finding mentorship, and building really a sense of community with other colleagues like the panel today, who really can offer that support, not only the tangible support, but also the emotional support that it takes to get through our programs and continue to thrive in our professional careers.
I was going to say, just from my own experience, I know I'm one of those rare people who actually at 15 wanted to be a psychologist. So
Me too, Marie.
So no wonder we're in the same group. I'm just a shy, introverted person by who I am, by nature. And that's something that I've worked to overcome. But as an immigrant and as a woman of African descent, there's a lot of connotations that people have, or expectations or assumptions that people make about you if you are reserved. That you may be aloof, that you somehow may feel you're uppity or stuck up, or a whole lot of different things that are just not who I am. And actually the way I am matches my group. Like, so I'm from Haiti, and that was part of like the social group I came from. We're more reserved. And I remember interacting with somebody who is from the Caribbean as well. And I just met this person. He was like, oh yeah, you're from Haiti. You guys, tend to be, I forgot what word he used, but I was like, he gets me. He knows who I am. He knows my culture. He's from the same region. And so those are some of the things that I think, just as a woman pursuing leadership in a country that's different than my own, even though I'm one of that 1.5 generation, I came here before I was 11. So I was significantly impacted by US culture, but grew up in a home where my parents didn't speak English. So I'm navigating different cultures and different views of how people have seen me. I think finding space in APA has been great. When I was in graduate school, I did a public policy internship at APA before I got my PhD. And sorry about those things. I said do not disturb and it's still popping up. Actually, you know, it was wonderful to just meet wonderful people there. And I met Dr. Sherry Miles Cohen at that time, who was one of the instrumental people with LIWP and CWP. And I remember reaching out to her when I thought, oh, I want to get back connected with APA. And she was letting me know about the call for nominations. So I think finding friendly people, getting involved with organizations that want to network and that want to mentor and support and nurture. And I just remembering who I am, and that, you know, that regardless of how people see me, that I, you know, prioritize my values and the work that I want to do.
I will share just a couple of thoughts, and if other folks have things, please contribute. But so one is, I came on when y'all like were having a little bit of a discussion about student loans and like the kind of presentation right before we came on. And so I'm a first generation college student also coming up in poverty. And I was driving the other day and was thinking, I was like, oh, like the amount that I didn't know about like higher education and how it was like that my parents didn't know, and like no one, there was literally like no, like I didn't even know that I didn't know, like what I thought like how you went to college was just you take student loans, like massive student loans. And like what my parents didn't know about it was significant. And that is like just that kind of literacy of like higher education, like just really not being there and not even knowing like like I went to an undergrad that was like everyone was a research psychologist, and I didn't like know that. Like I didn't understand that there was a difference between research psychologists and like clinical practitioners. So there was like there was one clinician on like this entire educational, like, you know, and I was like, and I just didn't know what I didn't know about higher education or like professional people or like, you know, how to become a psychologist. So the fact that I'm here is like a mix of just like bumbling, like sort of bumping into like rightish decisions. And then, but it still has cost me so much money. And so that really stood out to me as just a piece of like not knowing and then not having access to people who know. And so yes, Tisha, you're like, because it is all of like the loan forgiveness and the public service loan forgiveness kind of conversation that's making me really realize like how much I did not know. And so the other kind of and so kind of what I do for that is I like sign every petition and I call every politician and I tell everyone, like I've emailed everyone the loan forgiveness things, and I have like very straightforward conversations about how much my student loan debt is so that folks are like aware. And so that's one way. And then the other thing that I'm kind of currently going through is I'm a queer person, I'm a fat person, and I'm going through fertility things because I'm in a relationship that doesn't have any sperm in it. And so we need fertility support. And along the way, like I've actually had some like infertility things. And so I'm going to a new clinic, and I was pissed to come across their intake forms, which has a BMI limitation over which a certain body size, they will not even work with you. And so I sent ferocious email, and Yelp reviews is also my like kind of intervention of choice sometimes, is like, these are not safe people. And so that's sometimes like just on a personal way, I'm like, you can't get away with this. Like I have feelings about it. Other thought? Do we have time a little bit, Marie, for a few more thoughts, or are we?
Yeah, we do have time for a few more thoughts, and then we'll go to the next one after that.
Other thoughts from folks? We're happy to talk a little bit about how CWP contributes. Mostly it's just getting mad about stuff and then like
Yeah. And then we have like a
making-
webinar, like we had one recently on infertility, women in color,
Yes.
and trying to figure out how do we support each other.
100% Marie. It's like
Yeah.
mostly I'm mad about this because this happened to me. And so now I'm making a resource and I'm creating a moment for community and like I'm connecting to other people and I'm telling other people that this is indeed a problem. And so that's mostly how CWP responds. But
Okay, we do have a hand.
Eric?
Well, really quick, just as a president of a state association, how could state associations do more to partner with groups like CWP and help maybe at the state and more local level?
I'll jump in and others can supplement, add to my response. So thanks for the question. CWP has a list of liaisons, folks that we network with. And so if the Arkansas State Psychological Association doesn't already have a member who is serving as a liaison with CWP, we would welcome you all identifying somebody and contacting any member of the committee to get them on our network list. So as a committee, we invite our liaisons to some of our meetings throughout the year. And then we also host a networking brunch or breakfast at APA each year where we invite everybody within our network and share some of the activities that we have done over the past year, some of our plans for the upcoming year, hear what's happening within their organizations or, you know, with their constituents in relation to women, to provide a professional network where folks can connect with one another, provide resources and supports to address these issues in their own states or their own organizations. So that's one way, is get them connected with CWP and get involved in our network. I also saw that there was a comment about that there was years ago that there was a committee on women within the Arkansas Psychological Association, maybe reviving that committee. And so there is, you know, as Marie had mentioned, there are just a lot of attacks on women's rights and women's issues, especially today, that we need to be able to, as psychologists, to advocate and share what psychological science says on these decisions that are being made that impact girls and women. So these are just not issues that are going to go away in the near future. And we need psychologists that are involved at the community and state levels to advocate and fight for women's issues, particularly those that research demonstrates has a link to our well-being.
Lisa, can I just add in, I don't know if you can see me or not. I can't see myself, but I just wanted to say, just on top of what you're saying, I just think on a personal level, the amount of women's issues that we're facing right now is just so overwhelming, and it becomes I just say personally, but I hear it with my friends and colleagues, it becomes feels as though it's hard to kind of, oh, where do I start? Where do I get up in the morning? Because it seems like they're coming at us. And so that idea of having women in every organization that you're working with, because there is a different perspective there, and having opportunities for women to come together is such a source of strength for the women around you that are just seeing so much in the news. So it's good on a technical level on many different aspects, but on a personal level to continue the fight, that also, it's just really important to have women together.
And thank you so much. And I'm so sorry, Michelle. I know that you did not get the link, and unfortunately we can't see you. We're just seeing a table. But thank you for those comments. Oh, there you go.
I
There
just
you
hit
are.
a button. Okay. Because
Okay.
I can't see myself at all. Okay. Good.
Yeah, awesome. And so next we'll go to the next slide. And let's see. Okay, there we go. Sorry. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lisa Flores and Dr. Michelle Ritter, although her name says Dr. Meghna Patel, although that's incorrect. Thank you.
Well, I certainly jump in whenever, but I just want to, the idea of promoting women's leadership, that kind of just goes into what I was just saying. And, when I looked at this slide and we're talking about factors that supported my leadership journey or the leadership journey of others that are women that I've come across in my lifetime, it really tends to be that connection piece, the connection piece of connecting with other women. And what we'll talk about here and encourage people to share their stories. But, why is it important for society to promote women's leadership? And how did that happen for you? And are there areas that we can share and continue to promote as we move forward? And as I thought about it on a personal level, I had this wonderful experience when I was very newly out of graduate school, and I was working in a school district. And I ended up being in a meeting with another psychologist. We were kind of on opposite ends of a debate over what was best for a child we were working with. And then after that meeting, she had come up to me, and I would say she was probably about 30 years older than me, and had said, had given me some compliments on what I had said, and that we had more alike than we had that were different. And would I like to go out to lunch with her at some point? She ended up being such a mentor in my life. And I would say that there's probably 5 or 6 women that I would say the same thing. And I remember about 20 years down the road after that, a college had called me up to ask. I had a private practice, and they're asking if I could mentor some students. And at the time I had 3 small children and trying to run a practice and feeling like I'm barely keeping things afloat. And I sat down with that same woman to say, what do you think I should do? I'm just not sure how I can fit it in. And she's like, Michelle, look at how our relationship and how much that has supported you, and then how much you've supported me, and we need to move it forward. And so what can you do to help? And so she was a little bit harsher with me than that, but she was like, you need to get up and start doing something and paying it forward is what I'm so I value so much the mothers in my life. I would say that there were quite a few mothers that came out of the woodwork. And I encourage anybody to share other stories that, what has supported your leadership journey. I'm sure we have many.
I'll just share that I totally agree with you. I think finding other women leaders to build a community and a support system has been critical. I know a lot of the mentors in my life are women, and also individuals who have various diversity factors that are similar to mine, right? Like individuals who can understand when I say, hey, it feels really awkward when I walk into a room of hospital leaders and I'm the only person who looks like me. So And what's it like when you come across as, you know, the youngest person in the room, or whatever the stereotype is? How do you overcome it? So for me, it's been not only seeking out women mentors, but seeking out individuals who can understand some of the struggles that I go through, and give me guidance about, you know, what works, what doesn't work, and how to navigate the minefield a little bit.
Thanks for sharing that, Meghna. I will add just briefly, what has supported my leadership has been important people, psychologists who have encouraged me, who have shared different opportunities with me about leadership opportunities. A senior woman in my field sent me an email about this CWP opening, I don't know, 3-4 years ago now. And if she hadn't done it, I wouldn't have applied. Many of the mentors or psychologists that have encouraged me have been white women, and some have been white men too. And so I think that, like, not under the value of representation has been really important, and having connections with other psychologists of color has been really important and meaningful in my journey. And I probably would not be where I am today if I depended solely on them, because there's so few of them. As you know, as others have mentioned, we need all of us to think about ways that we can uplift, support, encourage, and push other women, either to get into psychology or to get into leadership positions within psychology, using the power, the positions that we have, and just recognize that that encouragement can make a difference for somebody in your world, in your networks.
I'm just add on to that. I agree with you completely. I think that there's a general, you know, societal message of downplaying women's accomplishments a lot of times. And so when there is an opportunity for a mentor to jump in and say, hey, you can do this. Sometimes it's only that you need to then go the next step. And actually, Lisa, the same exact thing happened to me, where I got an email from a colleague, a psychologist, and that I had worked with previously, that said, hey, there's this position open at CWP, you should apply for it. And I would have never done that if she hadn't, one, made me aware of it, and number two, told me that she thought I could do that. So, you know, that was vitally important, because I respected her so much.
I think, you know, part what y'all are saying is making me think of is sometimes, like, if you don't have it in your actual circle, like, you have to like kind of you have to identify it like in the world, because it was some point in my training, someone had asked me like, oh, like, who is a white woman psychologist kind of like role model who's like doing what you want to do? And I was like, ooh, like, it's nobody. Like, there's nobody in my immediate circle who was like saying the things that I thought were important and like pushing kind of conversations, like kind of radical is a word that I like deeply identify with. And like, no one was just kind of like taking things far enough. And so I was like, well, where else can I see that in the world? And so if it's not right in front of me, like kind of not like kind of really like not making it kind of be like, well, all I see is all that I can be, but like finding the other kind of like places where that can exist, and then really internalizing like you can be that too. Like, if you don't see it and you want to be it, like you can do that. And I really remember there was at some point in my training, I had a supervisor for like a rotation who had like visible tattoos and purple hair. And I was like, where you been, girl? Like, it just was the first time I'd really ever seen anyone who like presented themselves, you know, in like a very themselves way. And so that felt like she didn't do anything other than like just kind of be her, you know, but her physicality made a big difference. And I will make this other, like, sometimes I'm like, should I say this? But I just for like white men, like in my actual personal circle, like, and I have met many, many psychologists in my life and career, like I cannot identify a single like personal relationship with a white male psychologist that I feel like has like seen me and like been doing the work themselves and like would have sent me any of these like CWP, would not even like have known CWP like existed. And so I just like throw that out there as like part of what, like why it's so important is like everyone has to take ownership of that. Like everyone has to believe that you can support and like that it's your job and role to like see people and be aware of the resources and like support and like create bridges and connections. And yeah, so that when someone asks like, you know, someone, one of your students or someone that you know, like, oh, like who's like a white male psychologist or who's a white woman psychologist who, and they say your name, like that has made a big difference in my life. It's like I want people to be able to say my name if they were asked that question, and they can only do that if you have presented yourself in that way.
I guess we're towards the end of our time, so I'm going to turn to the next slide and just ask Michelle and Aaron if you can continue just you know, managing questions from the audience, and if there's anything in the chat.
Yeah, please, if there are questions, this is a great time. I think it's been an awesome discussion, and it'd be great to continue it.
This is Kyla. Hello, wonderful, very rich information. So I just appreciate everybody. Just today, I feel like it's been an awesome time of people sharing themselves authentically. So I appreciate that just seeing that model in front of me is helpful for me to see. And I appreciate you all talking about intersectionality and hidden identities, because I feel like as a professional, I've dealt with, you know, aspects of my identity that obviously people can see, but others that people can't. And I do strive to also bring all of that into a professional space in a way that feels comfortable to me. So I appreciate everybody sharing. But I guess I wonder if there's any take home. I know everybody has mentioned so many good nuggets, but any take home that you all would have for early career folks, or even people in the middle kind of part of their career as I am, who are still kind of struggling with how to bring all of themselves. Because I asked the previous presenter this as well, but I wonder this from you all, like any just kind of tips for how to bring all of yourself into a space in a way that you feel is appropriately boundary, but still true to who you are.
Yeah. I think that's such a rich question. And I was part of the LIWP class a little while back, I guess last year, not that long ago. It just feels like a lot has happened. And I had the pleasure of having Dr. Flores there as part of our faculty. But we had a discussion about this question about a lot of times people talk about being an authentic leader and a genuine leader. And if you are part of an underrepresented group, is that safe? You know, do organizations kind of do some gaslighting with that and tell you, yes, be yourself. And then when you are, all of a sudden you're the problem. And so I think that that's one thing, that's one of the challenges that people have in terms of in professional spaces. And I wanted to just say that to normalize that when people find themselves having difficulty with that authenticity, but they know they're a genuine person and they're who they are, you know, it's like, is it just you, or is it, you know, the space? Do we need to do better as a field as well as organizations to help people bring themselves without fear of judgment or retaliation or exclusion. And sometimes people are just, and organizations are great at doing that in terms of sending the message that you don't belong without saying anything specifically or acting on them. So I think it does involve some risk. And I love Aaron, what Aaron was saying before is those people who are bold enough to take those risks, they make space for all of us to do that. And not all of us can do that, right? So it's really about thinking about, sometimes it's later in your career, maybe you've established some type of professional cushion and you're like, well, you know, I'm going to change how I am in this space and I'm going to be more out there with who I am. But it is that there is a risk. And sometimes people who do take those risks feel it and are excluded or are forced to leave organizations and spaces.
Thanks for saying that, Marie. This is Josie. I own a group practice, and I partly co-founded this group practice for this very reason, right? Because so many of our psychologists and our peers, especially women of color, aren't able to show up as their authentic selves because of that safety reason and because of the histories, right? Our organizations are embedded in structures that are capitalist and racist, right? Homophobic, all the things. And so thinking, I love that Marie is like that advice that it's okay not to show up all yourself in some spaces. You're not meant to show up as all of yourselves. But there is spaces that some psychologists are creating alternatively because of that sentiment, right? And not feeling safe in many of the mainstream org structures. And so, yeah, Marie, thank you for bringing that comment. And it just made me think of that some of us are out here trying to create alternative spaces for that reason, where our people can show up as their authentic selves in whatever form that looks like.
The thing that really worked for me, both Marie and Magna still work for the VA, and I worked for the VA for many years and left this last summer because I was really tired of people saying they wanted to hear what I had to say, but like not really wanting to hear what I had to say. So the thing that was really, really helpful is like, if there was an ally in a meeting, you know, I feel like it's like that there's I often have like source amnesia where like I remember hearing some psychological thing somewhere and I'm like, it was probably a study, but it was probably a tweet, but there was some like study that was just kind of talking about like having like a Confederate in the room and like how that changed like how you show up. And so even if the Confederate isn't somebody who knows all of you, like it is still really, really helpful. Like if there's somebody else who will like back you up, or if you say something like I can't like the amount of times I've just been in a meeting where like it's just a face full of like, it's a Zoom room full of like just staring faces who do not say anything back to like the real vulnerable like thing that you have shared. Sometimes it's like, oh, I'm sorry that happened to you. And you're like, I'm not here to be like, I'm not here for you to learn a lesson off of my back. Like I need you to like engage with this moment. And so like having somebody who will respond, who you know will respond and who will see you, and like that is by far the thing that has, you know, allowed me to feel like that I can bring any type of like realness to a space. Because even if nobody else gets it, if there's one other person who is like, I hear you, I see that, they respond to what you're saying, like it can really make a difference. And then that creates that boldness piece that Marie was talking about. So I think we might be at time.
I think we probably are, but Lisa, were you about to say something before we wrap up? No, okay. Yeah, thank you all so much. And we are just a little bit, few minutes over, but I just wanted to say really quickly, and Lisa, you may be able to just to like add more to this, but you know, this APA's Committee on Women in Psychology is just one of the many committees out there. And so I think joining APA, I meet a lot of people when I travel and they're like, I'm not a member of APA. And a lot of people have ideas about APA, but there is a space. There's so many different organizations, so many divisions and committees as well. And there are announcements for a range of different committees, not just CWP, that you can apply for and contribute your voice and be a part of making a change. And I just can't remember right now when the announcement go out, but I think Lisa probably does.
The announcements for applying for boards and committees will be coming out before the end of the year. So we have finalized the slate for CWP at our last meeting. So I think these are spring deadlines, applications are sometime in the spring. And yeah, definitely there are ways to get involved both at the division level as well as the larger APA governance level through boards and committees. And these are just great places to not just hone your leadership skills, but also to make an impact on the organization or professional organization. And this is a great time. In the last few years, they are making a concerted effort, and that was brought up earlier, I think, in Marie's introduction, of accountability as an organization, and recognizing the importance of having a diverse range of voices represented in moving the organization forward. So, and we are also opening up spaces for early career members. I think that in the past there have been, these positions have largely been restricted for mid-career and late career, and our younger psychologists, early career psychologists and students have really made a push to expand their spaces for them to contribute, and they bring just a wealth of ideas and wisdom that is helping the organization. So regardless of what stage you're at, reach out, find opportunities to get involved. We can use your input, especially if you're feminist and woman oriented. We need your help. Thank you, Marie, for organizing this presentation today.
And thank you all for being here with me for the ARPA conference. We are going to stop now, and thank you all for just participating in this discussion. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.